Namaste and welcome to Wise Owl Career Guide. Today we have Miss Isha Darshi Mishra with us, who started her career in the field of coding, which is a very technical background, and then decided to explore various other roles in the field of HR. Let's hear from her what has her career journey been like. Welcome, Isha.
Thanks for having me here, Neha. It's lovely to get a chance to speak to you and your audience.
So, Isha, before we get into your career journey, what has been your educational background like?
About my background, I think I'll start with how my life has been overall personally. My father was from the army, which means that I did not stay in any place for more than 3 to 3.5 years tops.
Okay,
So my schooling has been all over the country, and I did my bachelor's in technology and computer science from a college in Bhubaneswar, which is where my dad's last posting was as he was
okay,
getting retired. And then I did my master's in human resource management from XLRI Jamshedpur. So that's a
okay.
little bit about me personally and also about my educational background.
So, you started your first job as a computer engineer, or was it in the field of HR itself?
Sure. So, the answer to that question, Neha, is yes, I did start my career in coding. So I joined a IT services organization, and I did this for roughly 3 years. But
Okay,
1 year into my job, I did realize that this was not something that I wanted to continue doing, which is why I started pursuing my master's in HR after working in computer science or coding for almost 3 years.
okay. So, Isha, just to help our audiences understand, what was the work like, as a computer engineer in the coding world? And what got you to actually shift from there to a very different field altogether?
Sure. I think everyone has their own preferences. As of for me, I was really, really good at coding since a very young age. I remember I was about 9 or 10 when I was already sitting and coding in something called Logos, which a lot of you might not have even heard of. And I was
Yeah.
very passionate about surfing the internet, reading up on stuff, building my knowledge, but also exploring the computer as a device, both from a hardware and a software perspective. And this led my father to believe that I would be very, very good at computer science. And he kind of almost brainwashed me into taking it up. Whereas my own passion always lied in the creative side. I had made up my mind to pursue product design, which is really building products which you
Okay.
can touch, feel, and hold, or explore architecture. These were the two streams that I was very, very passionate about. But since I ended up taking up computer science, I joined, as I said, a IT services company. But I realized that I did not enjoy sitting in front of a screen, coding for hours without too much human interaction. It almost made me feel claustrophobic, lethargic, and my energies were not being leveraged in the right direction. And that's when I made up my mind that this is not for me and I need to pursue something else, which gives
Mhm.
me the scope to really put my skills to use. So,
Okay.
to answer your question, Neha, I joined in an IT services company. I did not enjoy it very much. And 1 year into the job, I had made up my mind that I need to do something else.
Okay. So, Isha, going through your career graph and everything, we see that you worked with some of the dream companies, and that too, in talent acquisition role there. So, when when people, these companies, when they're hiring the freshers, what are the things that they're looking for?
So, to answer your question, Neha, I think what we look for is very simple. And this
Mm-hmm.
is my interpretation. Everyone will have their own interpretation and their own thought process here. The number one element is attitude tops aptitude. Now, what that means
Okay.
is we look for candidates who have a sense of passion, who
Mm-hmm.
have a sense of energy in how they want to live their life and work in any organization that they join. So that's the number one thing that we look for. The second one is we look for spikes. Now, what does that mean? It means that I'm not looking for a person who is consistently good in anything and everything that they do. But at the same
Okay.
time, we will look for a sort of a spike in any particular field. So you might have showed some brilliance, energy, consistency, and sincerity in, say, pursuing sports or in
Okay.
pursuing the creative field, or
Mm-hmm.
you might have just pursued a hobby with a lot of passion so that it became something which you know the in and out of. So we're looking for
Right.
spike, and that is a spike that help us understand that has this individual at any point of time in their life
Mm-hmm.
demonstrated evidence of being able to take up something, do it consistently, and deliver there consistently. So that's the second thing, which is
Okay.
spike. First one was attitude, second one was spikes, and the third one is the why. Now,
Okay.
you would have seen that this conversation has really picked up in the last few years, where organizations are talking about their purpose, leaders are talking about their purpose, and now even youngsters have started talking about their purpose. And we have the Greta Thunbergs of the world who are so into sustainability, and you very clearly know such a young child's why. And what we mean by the why and how it helps is while this why will evolve, which is why am I doing something when I'm 20 years old versus why am I doing
Mhm.
something when I'm 30 versus 40, this will keep evolving. But at the
Right.
same time, knowing that why will help me as an individual look at the bigger picture, look at it more holistically, take everyone along in most cases, and also be able to be passionate about it from a more elevated space instead of
Right.
just looking at one cell at one point of time. So I think that's what also that we look for in an individual, that does this individual know why he or she is so passionate about a certain uh, thing that they want to do, a certain organization that they want to join, or a certain role that they want to play.
Mm-hmm.
And does this then create a fire in their belly, which will sustain them through all the
Mm.
challenges that they will face when they join a new setup, which they are not familiar with? So that
Right.
would be the third one.
Okay. So, Isha, as you mentioned, finding the why is something that you look for. But for a fresher, when they get their first, job offer, the thought that they have of what exactly their role
Hmm.
would entail versus the reality of when they join and the
Hmm.
initial 1 or 2 months of work that they have is
Hmm.
actually very different. So
Hmm.
if we were to, understand what kind of actual work do freshers get to do once they join? If we take the example of, let's say,
Hmm.
a talent acquisition role. So
Sure.
when a college fresher joins, what happens is what is the kind of work that they get to do?
So I'll share this in the light of the organizations that I have worked with, and
Right.
I have also understood from my circle of influence, my batchmates, my colleagues. And what I really believe, Neha, is you craft
Mm-hmm.
your own role. And even as a fresher, you do have a lot of freedom to elevate your role as much
Okay.
as you would want to, like to, and at least can try to. And what I mean by that
Okay.
is the sky is the limit. You are
Mm-hmm.
given a blank canvas in most cases as a fresher. There is some
Correct.
history in some cases where somebody would have played the role in a certain way when you would have taken over from them, but you will still have that canvas to expand it or contract it or color it in a different way. As
Okay.
an example, when I joined as a talent acquisition manager, I did not have a predecessor. So I had to actually hire 10 people into my team, train them, and then work with them to deliver some really, really ambitious targets. And we actually
Okay.
overachieved those targets in a very short span of 6 months. And this was possible because all of us worked together as a team. We had the passion, energy, belief. And at the same time, I was dead focused on what we needed to achieve. So I think focus really helps. I think not relying on history and then painting the canvas the way that you like. And lastly, working together as a team really helps. Now, you might get
Okay.
that option at the start of the career. You might get the option to lead a team. You might get the option to report to someone as a part of
Mm-hmm.
the team. But in all these cases, you will have the freedom and the liberty to a large extent to shape your role. So take on that challenge, and it's very, very possible then to go in any direction that you want to go
Right. So, Isha, as you mentioned that you've worked in the talent acquisition role where you've mentored, trained, and helped the entire team grow. So, in today's date, the debate of job versus business is actually growing at a very fast pace. And now college fresh outs are also, thinking about whether they want to get into a job or they want to start a business. What is your advice to them? How to decide whether a job is good or starting a business is good?
in. So I haven't created my own business, so I'm not really qualified to speak about how to create a business and how to grow it. But having said that, I am keen to explore it at some point of time. So watch this space for more. But as someone who has considered both the options, I think my advice would only be that you follow your heart. And
Okay.
if something really, really calls to you and you feel like you want to try it out, there's no harm doing that. Because at the end of the day, we can imagine ourselves and forget about imagining, that is the reality, that we are sailors on a sea. And what that means is we will have the option to course correct if we have gone off course and we are not
Mm-hmm.
liking the direction that we are heading in. So, just to make it even more real, if I have started my career doing something in the corporate space, but I'm not liking it, then will have the option always to go try out a business at any point of time in my career. If I can consider it now, which is almost 13 years into my career, a fresher definitely can. My only
Right.
advice there is, like a sailor who is on the sea and it's a rough sea, we always need to keep checking if our ship is in top condition. Do we have enough provisions to last for the next 1 or 2 months that I need to reach my next destination? And if I don't, then do I also know how to get help? So I would always be careful, be prepared, be know when to ask help, who to ask help for, while I follow my dream, whether that's in the corporate world or that's in the business or the startup
Right.
world, that's perfectly all right.
Okay. So, Isha, you've, from talent acquisition role, you've also added another cap to your set of roles, which is a coaching hat. How did that come about?
Sure. So Neha, I have done various roles now. I started with talent acquisition. After that,
Mm-hmm.
I headed a factory as the head of HR for that factory. This was a tea and
Okay.
ice cream factory based out of Calcutta. So I understood a lot about industrial relations, external relations, working with blue collar employees, working with um, politicians, all of that in this role. Then I
Okay.
was a global learning business partner where I understood how learning and development works, but more importantly, how different parts of the world work, what are different ways of working, how do you
Mm-hmm.
influence people virtually when you cannot, in some cases, even meet them ever in your lifetime. way back in 2006, 2007, when we did not have the COVID world anywhere near the horizon. And then I actually
Right.
moved to our London headquarters, where I became a global HR business partner, where I started working very closely with really senior stakeholders based out of our Unilever headquarters. Very different
Mm-hmm.
experience. Came back to India and started working as a part of Flipkart, which is a very, very different organization altogether. And here I
Right.
was doing corporate HR business partnering, and now I'm in a center of excellence in talent management. So lots of different roles, Neha. And the common
Mm-hmm.
trend for me is to try out different things, because your learning curve really accelerates when you start something new. And then you kind of
Absolutely.
hit a plateau. And I think that's the time when you pick up something new. Now, for
Mm-hmm.
me, what is also happened over the years is I have realized that my why, while it does contribute, while what I do does contribute to my why, there's something more that I also want to do outside of just what my role requires me to do. And that's how
Okay.
I picked up coaching, because coaching, I think, is one of the most beautiful things for me, because I get an opportunity to go on a journey with somebody to explore and find solutions to any problems or situations in their lives. And to
Mm-hmm.
me, that is really the most satisfying, magnificent thing that you can do, if you could get an opportunity to help another individual in their own life journey. So that's how I picked up coaching. I really feel it's my calling. Very, very recently, one of my coaches crafted her own why, her own
Okay.
purpose. And it was very, very different from what she had imagined herself to be as an individual. So it was an eye opener for her. And she is so happy and grateful about it. Just her happiness for me is the most satisfying uh, things in my life right now. And that's how
Mm-hmm.
I feel coaching is something I want to continue doing.
Okay. So, Isha, nowadays we have a lot of courses, conducted
Mhm.
by ICF and various institutes where you can get your training and then decide whether you want to join an organization or start as an individual, independent coach. What are the kind of job opportunities available in Indian organizations for coaches?
Um, so I think we as India trail by few years. I wouldn't give the
Mm-hmm.
exact numbers, but by few years in trends from other developed countries or economies like the US. Now, if you would
Right.
see what's happening in the US economy, you would see a lot of life coaches who have become extremely popular. All of us have heard about Jay Shetty. All of us
Yeah.
have heard about Oprah Winfrey. All of us have heard about a lot of these popular life coaches who talk openly about positive self concept, about manifestation, about exploring your why. And that is a trend I see India picking up very soon. The market is
Okay.
growing. I wouldn't say
Mm-hmm.
it's mature yet, but the market is growing, and therefore it is the right time to get into coaching. The option then is, again, as I said, as a sailor, up
Mm-hmm.
to you how rough a sea you want to explore. There are individuals who do independent coaching, who are independent coaches and have coaches who are directly connected to them. There are individuals who also join organizations who are aggregators for coaches and who then work with corporates to then
Right.
allocate coaches. So, depending on your risk appetite, depending on how you want to balance your why with your how, you can make
Mm-hmm.
the choice to do independent coaching, do it as a part of an organization. Maybe you also start your own organization where you get together with a few friends who are also coaches and get into a space that interests you. I think the
Mm-hmm.
options are there. And the good thing is
Okay.
the market is only going to grow. I would say just get into it so that you gather the experiences. If you make mistakes, you learn from them, and then you can make your own choice.
Okay. So, Isha, we've talked about the various roles you've held, and you've mentioned how each role can be your own canvas to explore and expand as much as you want. What was your experience like when you got your first offer letter of your very first job to the reality of, the experience of your first week or month in that organization?
Hmm. Sure. So I would share both experiences. The first one was, of course, right after doing my bachelor's, and I joined, as I said, an IT services organization. I think I was quite young then, and everything was an experiment and experience. So
Okay.
while I remember the letter, I remember being sent to a training center in Trivandrum. It was a residential training center, and everything right from the sessions, the tests, even the food was challenging. But at the same
Okay.
time, a lot of fun because it was still like being in college where you are a group of people and you are in that experience together and you're going through those ups and downs together. So it was a lot of fun. It was
Mm-hmm.
challenging. But I think it was almost like continuing college. So it was a game for me. So I had a lot
Okay.
of fun. I never was a person who would get stressed with work. Um, I mean, that's all I remember. That this is a new experience. It's challenging. I will, you know, get through this. I
Hmm.
was never super competitive, so I never thought that I need to be top of the class. For me, it was let me get through this, and then we'll think about what's next, what's next, what's next. So I ended up
Okay.
having a lot of fun. I did realize, like I said, 1 year into the role, that this is not something I want to continue doing. So that's the other realization for me. And I think that comes when, for me, I'm not in a super competitive zone. It's more like, let me experience this. Am I liking the experience? Yes. Okay, let's keep moving. No, let's try something new. So that's what happened
Okay.
in the first job. After MBA, I had a great experience because we joined as a batch of management trainees. And every 2 months, we were doing new projects, which were very, very stressful, compressed in a very
Okay.
small, in a small duration of time. So the deliverables versus the deadlines were always going in a tangent. So a lot of stress, but I think the stress really trained us for the life ahead. And I
Mm-hmm.
had a lot of fun
Okay.
irrespective whether the experience was great or not. So it's not like I delivered in flying colors in all those experiences. Some of them were really good, some of them were not so good. But having said that, at the end of the training, I was a super confident person who understood how different parts of the organization worked. What could I do to help problem solve when I was put into a difficult situation?
Okay. So, Isha, if I were to ask you for one tip for the freshers to ensure that, wherever they go, whatever, role or company they join, they can make a successful career, what would that tip be?
So there is no one silver bullet, Neha. I think that's the first
Okay.
thing that I will start with. And everyone has their own unique style of
Absolutely.
making themselves stick. And making themselves stick would be to help the organization experience themselves in an optimal way, but for them also to experience the organizations in an optimal way. It's a two-way street. And
Right.
and I think that's really important. One of the things that we tend to get into a trap, and probably it's also a cultural thing, is that I want to make sure that I come across as an excellent employee, and that image is something that I want to continuously maintain. I
Right.
think that's one thing that I would be very, very conscious of, that
Hmm.
while it's also about my brand, my personal brand, it's also about how I am experiencing the organization. So
Right.
continuously looking at both parts of the mirror, I think is really, really important. Having
Okay.
said that, if we have both the, scales balanced,
Mm-hmm.
after that, the only one secret element or the element that all of us know is working hard. I think there is no other option than to really consistently work hard. Now, that doesn't mean that I burn the midnight oil and do this for hours, but consistently putting in effort and knowing what I'm doing, why I'm doing, how I'm doing, analyzing that, improving that through a continuous loop of, like we say, this is a
Right.
minimum viable product is extremely important. So these are the two things that I would leave the students with.
Sure. Thank you so much, Isha, for sharing your experiences and your journey with us. It was a pleasure having you.
Super. Thank you so much, Neha. Thank you so much for having me, and all the best with your uh, experiment. You are also conducting your own experiment. So,
Yes.
congratulations for that, and all the best in the journey.
Thank you.
So that was Miss Isha Darshi Mishra sharing with us her career journey and what she said about finding your why, irrespective of what stage of your career you are at. If you can understand why you're doing what you're doing or why you're in a particular role, your progress, your success in any field that you work in will be far higher, because then you will understand whether you're passionate about it, you enjoy the work that you're doing or not. If you're not, then you know you can do the course correction as she said, and there is no age limit or number of years of experience limiting you from doing that change at any point in your life. If you have any questions that you want to ask Isha, do write to us in the comments below and we'll get back to you. Also, do like, share, and subscribe the channel. Thank you.